Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're continuing our journey through the sources from Lóng Tíng. And if you've been following along, you'll know his mission, really. It's always about building these bridges, West and East, tradition, modernity.
Hmm.
But today, we're looking at a bridge that might seem, well, a bit unexpected. Connecting the joystick to the CEO's chair, essentially.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. We're diving straight into his work, Leadership Lessons from Games. When play becomes practice.
And our mission today, yours and mine, is pretty specific. We want to pull out the real actionable knowledge here. The idea is that all those hours spent in digital worlds, they aren't just escape.
Right.
They're actually genuine practice sessions, high fidelity even for leadership. And the central thesis here, it's really quite transformative, I think, that games aren't just entertainment. They're actually, well, secret mentors almost, giving us this unique, repeatable access to what he calls moral laboratories, places that really shape who we become, when the stakes feel manageable. That phrase, moral laboratories, that really jumps out at me. It elevates the whole thing way beyond thinking about game strategy, doesn't it?
Yes.
And the story he opens with, it kind of drops you, the listener, right into that decision point he talks about.
Yeah.
He describes the first time he really felt that leadership weight. And it wasn't in some office meeting.
No, not at all.
It was like on a dying alien planet looking at two impossible choices flickering on his screen. And he says his heart was pounding not because of, digital monsters or whatever.
Right, not the combat.
But because of his conscience. The choices were both awful, ethically speaking. It wasn't about the right tactic. It's about the right thing to do, even if both hurt.
And what's so interesting there is how that simulated space just strips leadership down to its absolute core. When the usual metrics vanish, the game suddenly tests your ethics, your timing, your empathy. And it does it when nobody else is watching you, the leader. It really pushes that question. Who are you when the rulebook disappears? When winning isn't obvious, and that line between, say, success and wisdom gets blurry, that immediate kind of gut punch pressure where failure is definitely possible, but maybe not, world-ending, that's where character really starts to show itself.
And the foundation for all this, the scale of the laboratory he's working with is just mind-boggling. He mentions owning over 30,000 games across Steam, Epic, Origin, all of them.
Yeah, it's staggering.
And that's not just bragging, right? It means these digital worlds are like layers of memories for him.
Yeah.
Thousands of simulations covering pressure, emotion, risk, conflict.
Exactly. It's the ultimate safe space, in a way, to practice leadership. You can fail again, and it's okay. The consequences aren't permanent, which, as we'll get into, is just crucial for actually growing as a leader.
It's not just a game collection. It's like evidence of our deep need to imagine, simulate, practice these things.
That's it. He uses that huge library to show that the really tough dilemmas leaders face every day, not enough time, information's fuzzy, long-term effects are unclear, stakeholders want opposite things. All that stuff is perfectly mirrored and testable inside these complex game systems.
Okay, that really sets the stage.
Yeah.
Let's dig into this first section then. The foundation of leadership in code. Starting with how these digital tales connect way back to our oldest stories.
Yeah, we should start by seeing this as just the next step in human storytelling. Lóng Tíng makes this point so well. Games really echo our ancient myths, our timeless struggles. We used to tell stories around a campfire, right? Now we tell them through code, through interaction. But the big questions, they haven't really changed, whether it's a Greek tragedy asking them or a modern RPG. How do we choose when both choices cause pain? How do we build things that last? How do we deal with failure? And importantly, how do we find the strength to start over? That question. It's ancient, but it's also digital. It's like the heartbeat of his whole leadership idea.
And the first specific game he uses to explore that, particularly the relational side, is Mass Effect. This gets right into that immediate challenge of leading actual people.
Yes, face-to-face almost.
And the lesson is really striking. Leadership is presence, not perfection. It's about how you show up when it counts.
It's all about constant, immediate, ethical choices. In Mass Effect, you're Captain Shepard, leading this incredibly diverse crew, and every single time that dialogue wheel pops up, it's like a mirror. It reflects your empathy or your patience or maybe your ruthlessness.
Right.
You literally can't make everyone on your ship happy all the time, but you have to lead with integrity, even if sometimes integrity means making a hard call. He talks about those two main paths you can follow. Paragon, which is all about compassion, communication, finding diplomatic ways.
The nice way, maybe.
Sort of, yeah. And then Renegade, which is more focused on decisive action, pragmatism, sometimes pretty ruthless stuff. It's about accountability, getting the mission done, maybe above all else. So you're constantly calibrating between that soft power influence and the hard power of just giving an order.
That Paragon versus Renegade thing,
Yeah.
it feels so familiar from real work situations, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Where you have to pick between what's kind for one person versus what's necessary, maybe even cold, for the whole team or the project.
Exactly.
But the game adds this layer, this consequence. The Renegade path might get you quick results, maybe feel satisfying in the moment, but the buildup of broken trust, damaged relationships, that can sink your whole long-term effort. And the key takeaway he stresses is, well, it's kind of sobering. Trust, once it's broken, there's no save file for that.
Precisely. You know, in the game, technically you can reload an old save if a fight goes badly, but in terms of your character's relationship with a teammate, if you betray them or just dismiss them harshly, that feeling, that consequence, it sticks. That broken trust shows up later, maybe reduced loyalty, maybe certain options just aren't available anymore. It can lead to mission failure right when it matters most, even if you try to rewind the clock technically. It shows how permanent relationship damage can be, even in a world where you can undo technical mistakes.
And that connects to the idea of the decision moment itself being important, sacred, something we often rush past in the real world.
Yes.
Lóng Tíng points out that the silence before you choose, that sacred space, that little pause where you hold the options, you feel the weight of the consequences for everyone involved, and you choose with clear intention, that is leadership presence.
It stops you from just reacting.
Right. It makes sure the choice, whether it leans Paragon or Renegade, comes from considered conviction, not just fear or wanting the quick win.
So that's the micro, the relational level. Now, if we shift gears from that immediate dialogue stuff to the big picture, the macro strategy, we get to civilization. And this teaches something totally different, but just as vital. Leadership needs to focus on sustainability, not just pure expansion.
Okay, so moving from the personal to the systemic, to the historical view, what civilization teaches, almost forces on you, is patience. Like massive patience.
Oh, absolutely.
It makes leaders or players think in centuries, right? Not just quarters or budget cycles or even their own career.
Completely. In Civ, empires rise, alliances always seem to fall apart eventually. The game is deliberately set up to reward the long view. If you just focus on grabbing land quickly, building up a huge army right away, crushing everyone, often your civilization just burns out.
Runs out of steam.
Yeah, exhausts its resources, makes enemies of everyone, and then collapses from the inside because of mismanagement or maybe revolution. It might not even be an external enemy that gets you. It's the internal systems you ignored while you were busy chasing short-term glory.
So the big insight is sustainability is the real game. Leadership isn't just about how much you grab now or how many rivals you defeat. It's about how carefully, how meticulously you build systems that are resilient, adaptable, that will last long after you're gone.
Exactly. Every little policy choice you make, investing in philosophy way back when, or prioritizing sanitation, it becomes this cultural, environmental inheritance for generations you'll never even meet.
That's a heavy thought.
It is. Lóng Tíng really emphasizes that the systems outlive their creators, and that means you have to build with wisdom, which looks to the future, rather than ego, which is all about your current glory.
Right.
The leader has to think about resource management, climate effects, the morale of the people, not just military power. He uses that beautiful metaphor for it. Leading is like planting trees whose shade you may never sit under yourself.
Wow.
That really captures it, doesn't it? That's systemic leadership, investing in the well-being of a future you might not personally experience.
That's a really powerful foundation. Relational integrity on one hand, long-term systemic wisdom on the other. Okay, let's move into section 2, which tackles maybe the hardest part of leadership. Dealing with constant failure and managing all that inner chaos, what he calls adaptive leadership.
Yeah, and adaptive leadership really hinges on iteration, getting feedback quickly, and just sheer grit. And the perfect maybe surprising classroom for this, it's the roguelike game, Hades. He talks about playing Zagreus, the main character, and dying like 1,000 times, and what that forced repetition actually does to your relationship with making mistakes.
Okay, for anyone not familiar with roguelikes, Hades is basically about trying to escape the Greek underworld. And every time you die, which happens a lot, often brutally,
Oh, yes.
you go right back to the start. Same characters, same basic setup. But, and this is key, you keep some knowledge, some permanent upgrades you've earned. So the lesson it pounds into you over and over is simple, but kind of tough emotionally. Failure isn't defeat, it's just data.
That's the core mechanic, absolutely. The setback isn't some sign that you're inadequate. It's literally just a line of code in the language of growth.
Yeah.
You don't escape the underworld by suddenly getting good or by brute force. Zagreus only gets further because he listens, he learns the enemy attack patterns, he spends that currency he keeps, it's called darkness, on upgrades that persist between runs, and he adjusts his approach based on the tiny mistake that got him killed last time.
Right.
Adaptive leadership demands we treat setbacks like that, not as personal defeats, but as really valuable, hard-won data that tells us what to try next. The underworld, in this view, isn't hell. It's more like a classroom that only really opens up to people who have the grit to keep coming back after they fail.
So Hades is about handling external failure, iterating. But then Disco Elysium, that takes us inside, to the internal battlefield, the unquiet mind. This is such a cool point he makes. Leadership starts in your head, and your head isn't one clear voice. It's like a rowdy committee meeting happening constantly.
It's the ultimate self-awareness boot camp, and the game mechanics are brilliant at showing this. In Disco Elysium, your own thoughts and skills, things like logic, empathy, authority, even weirder ones like electrochemistry or Inland Empire, they're literally characters talking in your head.
Seriously.
Yeah. They argue with each other, they give you bad advice sometimes they save your skin, and they directly shape your choices, often battling against what you, the player, might intellectually think is the right move. The game basically forced Lóng Tíng to really confront that noisy, biased committee inside his own head.
That's a tough but necessary reminder, isn't it? That self-awareness isn't about feeling comfortable. It's about confrontation. We usually look for things that confirm what we already think, but real leadership means facing those internal biases like fear arguing with pride or impulse shouting down the quiet voice of caution.
Exactly. And the voices we choose to ignore in the heat of the moment. Those become the unconscious biases that inevitably trip us up in real-world strategy and how we manage our teams.
So the conclusion for a leader is pretty profound.
It is. The wisest leader listens inward before they speak outward. If you can't manage the chaos inside your own head, if you let fear or ego hijack the meeting, basically, how can you possibly hope to navigate the chaos of a global team or a market disruption or a real crisis? That internal balance is the starting point for guiding others.
Speaking of chaos, the next game, Wukong, Fallen Dynasty, this martial arts RPG, tackles external chaos head-on. The idea is that chaos isn't the enemy you have to beat, it's just the environment you're operating in.
It forces you into this posture of stillness within the storm. Leadership, especially in a crisis, needs that unshakable calm right in the middle of the roar, whether the roar is literal battle noise or metaphorical market panic.
Because if the leader freaks out,
the whole system, the whole team just destabilizes instantly. Lóng Tíng argues that real courage isn't loud or aggressive. It's a deep, quiet centeredness.
this ties right into emotional regulation, doesn't it? Often seen as a soft skill, but here it's like a tactical advantage.
Absolutely. In Wukong, there's a mechanic called morale rank that affect how strong you are, and keeping that inner focus is critical. The most powerful thing a leader can do, he observed, is regulate their own inner energy. Because the leader's mood, it becomes everyone else's weather.
It's a great line.
If the leader projects anxiety, the whole organization feels that turbulence immediately and proportionally, no matter what the objective facts are.
So power is found inwardly.
Power is found in still waters within, yeah. By keeping that internal balance, that center, the leader acts like an anchor for the team. When people sense your stillness, they can find their own rhythm, they can act effectively, creatively, even when things seem overwhelming.
And then rounding out this section on resilience, we come back to the legendarily tough Dark Souls, famous or maybe infamous for its brutal lessons in humility and persistence.
Dark Souls just strips away any arrogance you might have, usually in the first 15 minutes. It's a world designed deliberately to crush your ego again and again. Well, it teaches you respect, that's for sure. Respect the process, the environment, your opponents. Every time you die, it's this clear, immediate feedback loop, basically whispering, learn, Adjust your timing, commit to the attack, and keep going. The real victory, Lóng Tíng insists, isn't just beating the final boss. It's mastering your own impatience. It's the ability to slow down, actually analyze the pattern, and then execute your plan without rushing it.
That bonfire breath of gratitude he mentions, that really sticks out. The bonfire in the game's a checkpoint, sure, but it's also this little sanctuary, a place to pause, think about why you failed last time, gather up your humility, and get perspective to go again, knowing you'll probably fail again soon.
Yeah.
It's almost like a little spiritual reset.
And leadership, he argues from this, is less about conquering and more about accompanying others through their dark times. We don't have to pretend to be invincible, have all the answers, never mess up. We just need to be luminous.
Luminous.
Yeah, like a source of focused, patient light and courage that helps other people keep going. Drawing strength from that hard-won humility. It's the ability to get back up that defines you, not pretending you never fall down.
That's a really different image of a leader, not the conquering hero, but the luminous guide. Okay, moving into section 3, we're shifting focus a bit, looking at the relational side again, and also transformation, how we connect without words, and how we evolve our core principles.
And we start with a really unusual game, Journey, which he describes as a masterclass in guidance without hierarchy, without any explicit transaction even. It's all about silent cooperation, pure teamwork.
Right, I remember this one. You play the whole game, and you might meet other players, strangers, who journey with you for a while. But there's no chat, no instructions, no scoreboard, no roles like tank or healer.
I know that.
There's just moving together, this shared intention towards that distant mountain. And the lesson is all about that quiet connection.
He talks about how powerful it felt just waiting for a stranger in that beautiful desert landscape, walking side by side, maybe helping each other recharge energy with a little chime sound, climbing these impossible structures together. There was no reward for helping, no thank you button, just the connection itself. And Lóng Tíng realized this redefines leadership. Presence becomes the language. Trust becomes motion. Leadership is just the quiet act of waiting for a stranger. Because that simple act shows the connection, the shared journey itself is the point, not the destination, not some transaction.
That's about as non-hierarchical as it gets. Then we shift to this tension between honoring the past and adapting for the future, using Ghost of Tsushima. This gets into how tradition can be an anchor, but also sometimes a cage.
Exactly. Jin Sakai, the main character, he's raised in this very strict, honorable samurai code. It defines who he is, his strength, his purpose. But then the Mongol invasion happens, and that same honor code, it turns out to be completely ineffective, almost suicidal against their brutal tactics.
So he has to change.
He has to save his home, his people. He has to unlearn the very code that made him strong. He has to become the ghost, using tactics like stealth and assassination that are considered dishonorable by his code. And the leadership lesson there is critical. Sometimes protecting what you value requires really painful reinvention. The honorable path isn't always the obvious one, or the historical one, or the one that feels comfortable.
That highlights how difficult adapting can be, morally. So leading means evolving, but without just erasing who you are.
That's the balance. Bowing without breaking, honoring the past, but still walking forward with the pragmatism you need right now. It means constantly reevaluating your principles. Are they actually serving the bigger purpose, protection, the mission, or are they stopping you because they're just too rigid for the current reality?
That's tricky territory.
It is. And it leads nicely into the next idea about internal transformation, which he illustrates with Black Myth. Wukong, based on the classic Chinese story of the Monkey King. Wukong's journey isn't just about getting stronger or fighting monsters, it's about a really deep internal awakening.
Right, the Monkey King starts out as pure rebellion, doesn't he? Super clever, wild, restless, ambitious.
Totally. And Lóng Tíng said he saw himself in that early Wukong, ambitious, impatient for change, always fighting external shadows. But the final enduring lesson of that whole epic myth is that the striving, the illusion of total control, that restless energy, it eventually has to dissolve for true enlightenment, true mastery to happen.
So leadership, like Wukong's journey, demands this internal shift.
An internal awakening, yeah. And an acceptance, maybe, of what is. It's about mastering the mind, that monkey nature, and stopping the constant fight against external things. He even interprets the ancient character Wu in Wukong's name, not as awakening external power, but as the calming of the heart, stopping the inner turmoil.
So the ultimate act of leadership is self-liberation.
Acting without being attached to the outcome, serving a purpose bigger than yourself. It's a deeply spiritual idea drawn from a high-action game, reminding us that real influence, lasting power come from inner peace and purpose, not just aggression or cleverness.
Wow. Okay, so we've journeyed through these different game mirrors, from Mass Effect's empathy to Wukong's self-mastery.
And it's through reflecting on all these 9 mirrors that Lóng Tíng started to really see the deep cultural DNA woven into the code itself. Which brings us nicely to Section 4, the intercultural red thread.
Right, this is where his big mission really comes through. He's arguing these lessons aren't just Western or Eastern ideas in isolation. It's a conversation happening between cultures through these games.
Exactly. He says both perspectives, East and West, are true, but they're incomplete on their own. And to be a truly global leader today, you kind of need to hold both truths at the same time.
How does that show up in the games themselves?
Well, when he contrasts the design philosophies, you see it really clearly in the mechanics, the reward systems, the whole feel of the games. Think about Asian game design often. There's more emphasis on rhythm, humility, collective ethics, complex systems where everyone depends on each other.
Like in JRPGs.
Yeah, exactly. The leader is often like a quiet guardian within the system. The focus is on harmony, patience, keeping the party or the team stable, and working together. Party synergy is usually way more important than any one hero's individual power.
Okay, and the contrast.
Western game design tends to really celebrate individual agency, radical individuality, decisive will, forging your own path. The focus is often on action, personal courage, creating your own destiny, frequently through overcoming conflict. Think about games with those big branching skill trees just for your character, or clear moral alignment sliders for you as an individual. The design rewards the person who pushes boundaries.
So both teach leadership, just different aspects.
Essential aspects, both valid. One implicitly teaches us to listen deeply. Think about the collective flow. The other teaches us to act decisively, take personal responsibility. But the insight is, you can't lead effectively on a global scale if you're only operating from one of those worldviews. The future leader, he argues, is someone who can hold both the yin and the yang, the system's perspective and the individual soul, the collective and the personal.
And games become translators.
In a way, yes. They carry complex emotions, cultural philosophies across code, language, huge distances. When a player in Beijing and a player in Boston team up in a virtual world, maybe managing resources together or fighting a common enemy they are, without even realizing it maybe, walking through each other's cultural myths about leadership.
Huh. Never thought of it like that.
That Chinese perspective on systemic humility might be coded right into a game that a very action-oriented European leader is playing. It crosses borders invisibly.
So global leadership has to be relational then.
Inherently. It's the art of balancing big systems with individual people, balancing the need for speed with the need for stillness, balancing innovation with continuity, tradition. Culture, he says, isn't meant to be a wall. It's a living bridge. And it gets stronger through shared experiences like gaming. This idea that these digital stories teach us how to meet each other, not just what divides us. That's the heart of his intercultural point.
Okay, that leads us perfectly into the final section, Section 5, the discipline of awareness. Because it's one thing to hear about these amazing lessons from games. It's quite another to actually apply them in the middle of a stressful workday. And Lóng Tíng keeps coming back to this. Leadership isn't learned from a manual. It's not a download. It's refined through awareness and the pauses, the questions we ask ourselves, the courage to just notice our own patterns.
And he encourages you, the listener, the learner, to use the specific ideas from the games, those high contrast concepts, as lenses for your own daily work. It turns every decision, every interaction into a little moment of reflection. It brings the wisdom from the screen into your actual practice.
Let's walk through those specific questions he suggests, because they seem like the practical toolkit here. The first one, from Mass Effect, feels like a real gut check. What decision at work, right now, feels like a paragon or renegade choice?
Yeah. Where does empathy clash with efficiency? Are you just defaulting to the quick, efficient answer out of habit? Or are you consciously making the choice, really acknowledging the human impact, even if you still choose efficiency? And that flows into the next question, the metric versus the pulse.
Well, pulse.
Yeah. Which system are you optimizing right now without really seeing or acknowledging the human cost involved? Behind every KPI, every metric on that spreadsheet, there's a person, right? A pulse. Are you so focused on tweaking the numbers that you're missing the impact on the actual people, the soul of the team?
Oof. Okay, and linking back to Hades and failure.
Which recurring failure, that thing that seems to go wrong every time you try it a certain way, could you revisit right now as wisdom? Not bury it in shame, but see it as curriculum. Rewriting the story of that setback. It's not a confession of your flaws, it's mandatory learning for next time. Failure only really sticks if you refuse to learn the lesson, refuse to adapt the code.
And then the internal check-in from Disco Elysium.
What inner voice are you ignoring right now? That little dissenting opinion, maybe it's based on fear, maybe a gut feeling, maybe even a genuine moral niggle. What happens if you actually make space to listen to it? Sometimes the best strategy, the most disruptive idea doesn't arrive shouting, it's a whisper. You need that inner quiet to even hear it.
And the Ghost of Tsushima principle about adapting principles.
Where today do you need to carefully adjust your honor code, your standard operating procedure, to protect what really matters, the core mission, the people, the fundamental value? Bending with integrity, he reminds us, isn't weakness. It's not being wishy-washy. It's life moving through principle. It makes sure the principle serves the mission, not the other way around. Avoids that rigidity that can lead to breaking.
Okay, and the last one, drawing on Wo Long's calm and Dark Souls humility.
How do you keep your inner fire steady? Focused, but not consuming, especially when everything outside is chaotic and uncertain. Leadership isn't about trying to suppress emotion in yourself or others. It's more like tending a hearth. It needs constant, mindful, gentle effort to keep that calm, centered energy going, because that's what ultimately stabilizes everyone else. Each of these questions, he says, is like a doorway. He just urges us to walk through them slowly, think about our actual, real-world actions.
It's really effective how he turns these big game concepts into these quiet, personal reflection points. And to make this awareness stick, he suggests some really simple, practical daily rituals.
Yes, the rituals of awareness. And they aren't big, complicated things. They're small, consistent actions you can weave into your day, things that don't need anyone's approval or a fancy spreadsheet.
Like what?
Like maybe starting the day with just a 2-minute gratitude breath before you even open your email. Just grounding yourself, naming maybe 3 things you're thankful for, builds that inner calm right away. Or what he calls a digital bonfire break, maybe mid-afternoon. Step away from the screen for a minute and just name one specific lesson you learned from a recent mistake or setback.
Acknowledging the learning.
Exactly. And maybe sending just a simple, no-strings-attached message of appreciation to someone on your team who you know is carrying a heavy load, maybe unseen. It's a quiet gesture, builds that relational trust, that empathy. These aren't about getting something back. They're about cultivating consciousness, presence. And he really stresses this whole approach. It's not a one-time download. It's not information you just absorb. It's a rhythm, a discipline of awareness. It's not a destination you arrive at. You're always playing, always learning.
It feels right to end, sort of where we started, with this idea that every world we step into, every choice we make, even the simulated ones, they leave a mark. They write an echo inside us, shaping the leader we're becoming.
Game's end, right? But leadership, that process, it doesn't. Through all those thousands of hours in coded worlds, Lóng Tíng learned that leadership isn't ultimately about maximizing control. It's about cultivating consciousness. It's not about being technically perfect. It's about being reliably present. It's not about winning by dominating, but by weaving strong relationships, resilient systems. The empathy, the patience, the humility you practice in those virtual worlds, it travels with you. It gets coded into the real-world decisions you make next.
And when you think about the future, it does make you pause. Maybe the next generation of really great, globally aware leaders. Maybe they won't be entirely forged in boardrooms or MBA programs. Maybe they'll be shaped partly in the worlds they explore online. Worlds where, hopefully, cooperation starts to replace conquest, and where the rarest, most vital skill learned through failure is deep empathy, relational trust.
Their education will come partly from losing, honorably, again and again, from choosing kindness when no one's watching the scoreboard, and from finding that grit to get back up, ready to adapt after every single inevitable setback. Leadership, just like play, is an act of becoming, continuous, disciplined becoming.
Which brings us right back to Lóng Tíng's final and maybe most provocative thought, the one that pulls the digital mirror right back to our own lives. The real game isn't the one on the screen. If leadership is this ongoing story that we're all writing, every moment, how are you rewriting your code today? Embracing that humbling but also powerful truth that we are all, every one of us, well, in beta, forever updating, constantly debugging our own humanity. Something to think about until our next deep dive.